Bucknutters. Welcome into the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Wednesday, October 7th, 2015. I am Dave Biddle, and I am very happy to be joined by Bill Rabinowitz from the Columbus Dispatch. Two-time author Bill Rabinowitz. He has written Buckeye Rebirth a couple years ago about the 12-0 Buckeyes, and recently has published The Chase, a very popular book about the national champions. And Bill, welcome to the show. I really appreciate your time, sir.
Well, thank you, Dave. Nice to be here.
You've written two books in the last 3 years. Is there more interest in this book because they won the national championship so far, or is there more interest in the previous book because they're coming off such a bad season, Urban Meyer taking over, going 12-0? I'm just curious, which book are you getting more interest in?
I think this one, because it is a championship season. The 2012 season was more of a curiosity. People wanted to know about Urban Meyer, and hopefully I was able to tell people about his background and all that. But it was kind of a season without a climax. They went 12-0, and they had no postseason, and that was that. I had no intention of writing a second book, so this is not part of some master plan. But after writing that book, how could I not write one about the 2014 season, which was as crazy a season. It was really right out of a Hollywood script. And so I was like, when they won that, I knew that I was compelled to do it. And because I already had a publisher, Triumph Books out of Chicago, it was pretty much a turnkey operation. It was just, okay, we're doing it, let's do it, and that was that.
Yeah, good for you. As you mentioned, a Hollywood script. I mean, as sports fans, both of us, in addition to being journalists, we're both sports fans. And, yeah, if you wrote the script of a third-string quarterback taking over a major football program, winning a national championship, the first year of the college football playoff, for years people have wanted a playoff. It finally happened. If you wrote that script, sports fans would have laughed you off. They would have said, there's no way this would happen in sports, college football. It actually happened. As you reflect on it now, as you reflect in the book, just speak on that a little bit, just how the script couldn't have been written any better.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And what I found really interesting and rewarding was as I got into the interviews for the book, because I really did not want this to be a rehash of last season. I really wanted to kind of go from the inside out and talk to everybody I could talk to and really recreate the season as it happened. Obviously, I didn't have any intention of writing a book, so I really had to recreate it. And it was clear from doing the interviews and talking to the Urban Meyer and the assistant coaches and the players that this didn't happen by accident. All these things that happened, all the adversity they faced, yeah, they couldn't have predicted that. But they were well equipped to deal with it. They had leadership training from Tim Kite. They had been put through the ringer by the coaches, Urban Meyer and the assistants. It's a hard place to play. They demand a lot out of these guys. And so when adversity struck in terms of Braxton Miller, J.T. Barrett going down, losing Virginia Tech, and worst of all, the death of a teammate, Costa Caro George, any of those things could have derailed any team. And for these guys, it just almost made them stronger in certain ways. And that was the remarkable thing. And getting to talk to those guys, talking to the Michael Bennett's and the Evan Spencers and Jeff Hiremans and those guys, it was clear to me that this was a special team. I mean, it really was a special team. And that doesn't happen just by accident. I mean, it does in a way. You have to have the right group of people and the right circumstance. But like I said, what happened to them, the adversity they faced, could have there was no reason to think that a team can overcome that, and yet they did.
This is a very broad question, Bill, but I know the entire book is interesting. What are some of the most interesting parts of the book? Just let the listeners know, what are some of the most interesting parts of your book?
Well, I'll start with JT. Ohio State accepted his commitment to sign with them or to commit to them without ever having seen him throw live. And Urban Meyer and Tom Herman were borderline panicked when he accepted their offer because nowadays, as you know, high school kids want offers. And it used to be they'd get them junior year, senior year, late. And now they want them early. And they'd Ohio State had offered J.T. Barrett, but they didn't expect him to act on it. And then when he did and basically said, I want to commit, if they had said, no, you can't accept it, he would have probably gone somewhere else. And so there was this moment where they had like 10 minutes to figure out, okay, do we accept it or not? And Tom Herman kind of jumped on the table and said, I want this guy. I believe in him. And Urban Meyer kind of looked at him and said, okay, this is on you, pal. And obviously it worked out. So JT's story is fascinating. I've got an entire chapter on Cardale Jones, and I could have written an entire book on Cardale Jones. His story is just unbelievable. Growing up in Cleveland, the youngest of 6 kids, there was one night where he's staying in his house or his home, and some guy is in the home and has a gun and points the gun, and the gun goes off. Cardale happened to have been ducking down at the time looking for like a cell phone charger or something like that. He looks up, and there's a bullet hole where his head would have been. And shortly before that, he had started to become mentored by a woman named Michelle Nash, who Ted Ginn knew, was a cousin or related in some form to Christian Bryant. And they went that night from mentor to much more, because he called her at 2 o'clock in the morning and said, I can't live like this anymore. And she drives to pick him up. He's standing on the corner holding a grocery bag or whatever with his possessions. I mean, you just can picture that scene. And it's just unbelievable what Cardale Jones has overcome to get to this point. Even when he got to Ohio State, it was an incredibly bumpy ride. He couldn't get through the very first workout, not even the workout. He couldn't get through the warm-up to the workout. And Mickey Marotti told me, he said, I thought there is no way in the world this guy's ever going to survive this place. It was so bad at one point Tom Herman had him wear a dunce cap, which Michelle Nash, his mentor, just was furious about. They had she drove down from Cleveland to ream out Tom Herman about that. I mean, it was a very, very bumpy ride, and that chapter to me is one of my favorites, because it's such a human story, and that's what I really wanted to do with this book. Yes, it's a story about a football team and a football season, but it's really a book about people. It's a book about relationships. It's a book about overcoming adversity, and my wife, who was not a sports fan at all, loved reading the manuscript, because she could relate to it just as a person, just the human, the qualities, the human emotions, and all those things. That's what I really tried to capture. Like I said, I don't really think it's a football book. It's a book that happens to be about football.
That's so well said. It really is a human interest story. When you talk about Michelle Nash taking in Cardale as her guardian, and really being his, I know he has a mother, but really being his second mother and taking him in. Right. It's just such a special story. Hey, Bill, you did such a great job with the book. Let the listeners know. I'm sure many people out there already have the book. For those that don't have the book, how can they buy the book? What's the best way to buy your book, sir?
Well, if you're anywhere in Columbus and hopefully anywhere in Ohio, you can go to your local Barnes & Noble. In town, it's available at the Book Loft. I know it's at Costco, Buckeye Corner, I believe. And if you can't get it that way, you can go to Amazon.com or TriumphBooks.com. Like I said, I really feel strongly about this book, and I really feel like Ohio State fans, and even non-Ohio State fans, would enjoy it. And I hope it's the definitive account of what happened last year, and I certainly, with the interviews that I did, and I just think it tells the story of not just what happened, but how and why it happened, and so I am proud of it. I think people will enjoy it, and that's for a book that I never intended to write. I'm glad I did.
Yeah, no doubt about it. How much is the book, Bill? How much will it cost to buy the book?
It retails for $25. You can get it cheaper on Amazon, I know, and I assume at Barnes & Noble. I'm doing a signing there on Sunday. So I'd love for people to support their local bookstore. I think it's so important that people do that. So I would encourage people to buy it that way. But obviously, for people who don't live in Ohio and it's not convenient, then certainly feel free to go to Amazon. And I hope you really enjoy the book.
And you said you're doing a signing this Sunday at Barnes & Noble in Columbus?
Yeah, signing it at the Polaris Barnes & Noble. We were going to do it during the like a 1 to 3 or something like that, and then we realized, well, that's when the Bengals and Browns play, so let's bump it back. So we're going to do it 3:30 to 5:30 at the Polaris Barnes & Noble. And then next weekend, before the Penn State game, I'll have one at the Barnes & Noble near campus. So, and then I'm assuming I know I'm going to have a few more down the road, but those are the first two.
Well, I'm very happy for you. It's a fantastic book. Before I let you go, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you. You're welcome. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you one question about the current team. Speaking of quarterbacks, two guys we just talked about are still around, JT Barrett and Cardale Jones. Urban Meyer seems to be ready to ride or die with Cardale Jones as his quarterback, but as we both know, he was asked this week, would you consider putting JT Barrett in red zone situations? And Bill, even if he was thinking, I might want to do that, it would have been very easy for him to say, I don't want to do that. Cardale's our guy. For him to admit to us, we've talked about that, that spoke volumes to me. So my question to you is, do you think that Urban Meyer deep down prefers JT Barrett over Cardale Jones?
That's a great question, and I wouldn't presume to guess. I mean, the one thing that I know about Urban Meyer is that he does speak honestly. I mean, whatever he's I don't think he has a lot of guile when it comes to, okay, if I say this, then maybe people will interpret it this way. I think he just is an honest guy. So when he says that Cardale's his guy, but that he thinks that JT could be effective in those situations, but I thought that was a really interesting answer as well. I take him at his word. I mean, he's never deceived me. He's never kind of played those kind of games with me in any of the dealings I've ever had with him. For either of the books, for example, when there were certainly opportunities where he could have kind of, spun some things to me, and he didn't. So I take him at his word. That is a decision that is going to, no matter what happens, whether Ohio State, wins it all or they falter, that decision to play Cardale over JT is going to be second-guessed or questioned or thought about, whatever, for a long time. I do think that JT fits the system better than Cardale. Cardale is really a pure pro-style quarterback. I mean, he could run, but really is a scrambler. He's not a designed, run kind of quarterback. But then he'll make some throws, and you just go, well, of course. I mean, he's got an NFL arm. But he's inconsistent. He's certainly raw in certain ways. JT is much more even-keeled, kind of. He's just kind of steady. And it's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out. But like I said just before, I find it very interesting that he would open the possibility of having JT play in the red zone. In fact, I'm going to do a story on that in a couple of days about their troubles in the red zone. I went back and analyzed, what happened, and it is a variety of things. But it is clear that something's not quite clicking right now, and you can blame the offensive line, you can blame the receivers, you cannot blame Ezekiel Elliott. He's the one who kind of escapes blame. But
right.
It's clear that they have not clicked yet. On defense, they mostly have, but on offense, they haven't yet, and I think they have it in them. But I think they miss Devin Smith much more than people thought they would. I think they miss Evan Spencer more. And, in fact, the guy they may miss most of all is Jeff Hireman. Even though Jeff Hireman was not really healthy all last year, they miss his blocking. I've watched some of the blocks, and they miss him. But it's a different team. People think because Ohio State has all these guys back that they ought to just roll. It really is a different team. Every team has its own identity, its own personality, its own circumstance, and I think this one is trying to find its identity.
He is author Bill Rabinowitz from the Columbus Dispatch. Thank you very much, sir. That was great stuff. I really appreciate it, Bill.
Oh, I'm happy to be with you, Dave. I appreciate you having me on.
Everybody buy his book. It is The Chase by Bill Rabinowitz. Make sure you buy his book. You will not be disappointed. Thanks again to Bill Rabinowitz, and thanks to you for tuning into the show. I appreciate it. Play that Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.